Welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight. It's time to unwind, so go ahead and get cozy in a blanket. Find your most comfortable spot and let the weight of the day melt away. As you settle in, let tonight's story gently carry you into a peaceful, restful night. Close your eyes, relax, and let's begin. The rain had always been there. For as long as anyone could remember, it fell softly from the sky, a constant presence that shaped the city and its people. Some said it had been raining for thousands of years, though no one knew for certain. The oldest of the city's legends spoke of a time when the rain had not yet come, a time so distant and forgotten that it was barely more than a whisper in the wind. According to those old stories, the city had once been dry, almost like a desert, where the earth was cracked and thirsty, and the sky stretched above, endless and clear. But that was before the rain had arrived and wrapped the city in its comforting embrace. No one knew exactly when or why it began. Some said it was the will of the gods, a gift to save the people from drought. Others believed it was a punishment, though no one could quite agree on what the people had done to deserve it. Most, however, accepted it as simply part of life, a constant rhythm that shaped their days, their nights, their dreams. The rain was soft, not harsh like storms, but steady and gentle, falling in a mist that blurred the edges of the world. The streets were always wet, shining like mirrors beneath the glow of the lanterns that lined them. The trees dripped quietly, their leaves forever slick with moisture. The rooftops glistened in the rain, and the rivers that wound through the city were always full, their surfaces rippling with the endless patter of droplets. To the people of the city, the rain was more than just weather. It was a companion, a familiar presence that soothed their minds and slowed the passage of time. Life here moved at a different pace, unhurried, calm, as though the rain itself encouraged everyone to take things a little slower, to rest in its constant fall. Still, the legends persisted. Old stories, passed down through generations, spoke of a time before the rain, when the city had been different. Back then, they said, the sun had ruled the sky, fierce and relentless, burning the earth below until nothing but dust remained. There had been no rivers, no green trees, only endless stretches of dry, cracked ground. The people had struggled then, fighting for survival, for water, for shade. And then, one day, the rain had come. No one remembered exactly how or why it had started. Some said a great sacrifice had been made to bring the rain, while others whispered of an ancient pact, sealed long ago, that had called the rain to fall and never cease. But whatever the cause, the rain had saved them. It had transformed the city into a place of quiet beauty, where life could flourish, where peace could be found in the endless, soothing rhythm of water falling from the sky. And so, the people had learned to live with the rain. It was a part of them now, part of the city's very soul. It wrapped them in its mist, kept them safe, and lulled them into gentle sleep each night. Amaya had always been drawn to the rain. From the time she was a child, the soft patter of droplets on her window had filled her with a quiet sense of wonder. Unlike others who might tire of the constant drizzle, Amaya found beauty in it. She saw the rain as something more than just weather. It was a part of the city's soul, a rhythm that breathed life into the streets, the trees, and the rivers. But it wasn't just the rain's presence that captivated her. It was the mystery surrounding it. Amaya had grown up hearing the same stories that everyone else did. Stories of how the rain had fallen for as long as anyone could remember. How it had saved the city from the dry, desolate years. Yet, none of the tales ever explained why the rain had come, or if it would ever stop. There were whispers of legends, fragments of stories from the past, but nothing concrete. As she grew older, Amaya's fascination with the rain only deepened. She wasn't content to accept the rain as a simple fact of life. She wanted to understand it, to uncover its secrets. Why had it started? What had the city been like before? Was it true that the rain had once been absent for centuries, leaving the city almost like a desert? These questions filled her thoughts, driving her to devote herself to study. She became an intellectual, not just out of curiosity, but out of a genuine longing to piece together the truth behind the rain's endless fall. Amaya's days were often spent in the great libraries of the city, poring over ancient manuscripts, sifting through historical records, and searching for any clue that might reveal the origins of the rain. She visited libraries that were hidden in the forgotten corners of the city, old places that had been abandoned by most. She sought out scholars, those who had lived their lives trying to understand the mysteries of the world. Yet, despite her tireless efforts, Amaya found nothing. The rain's history seemed to be as elusive as the rain itself. Always there, yet impossible to grasp. This didn't deter her. If anything, it only fueled her obsession. She couldn't accept that the rain, something so vital to the city, could exist without a reason. There had to be an answer, hidden somewhere, waiting to be uncovered. Her search became her life's work, and though the rain had given her comfort for as long as she could remember, it had also filled her with an unshakable need to understand it. Amaya often found herself walking through the rain, her umbrella tucked away, letting the cool droplets fall on her skin as she contemplated the countless stories she had heard. The rain was more than a companion to her. It was a mystery that defined her existence. It was another quiet afternoon, the rain falling steadily, as it had for as long as anyone could remember. Amaya walked through the familiar streets of the city, her thoughts tangled in the same endless questions that had filled her mind for years. The morning had been spent in one of the city's oldest libraries, searching through ancient texts. But once again, she had found nothing. The mystery of the rain remained just as elusive as it had always been. The streets were mostly empty, the downpour driving people indoors. But Amaya never minded the rain. It was a part of her, just as much as it was a part of the city. She walked without an umbrella, letting the cool droplets fall on her as she made her way toward the stone bridge by the river. It was there, near the edge of the bridge, that she saw him. At first, he appeared as just another figure in the rain, standing still in the downpour, almost blending into the mist. But as she drew closer, something about him caught her attention. He was shorter than most, his entire body wrapped in a long, dark cloak with a hood that hung low over his face. The hood cast a deep shadow, obscuring his features almost completely. The only thing visible was his mouth, soft, with a slight curve that gave him a kind, almost gentle appearance. There was something strange about him, though not in a threatening way. It was as if he didn't quite belong to the city, or perhaps to this moment in time. He stood unmoving, his face turned upward toward the sky, as if he could see through the clouds. Amaya paused, unsure whether to approach him, but the rain had always made her feel more at peace, more open to the world around her, and something about the way he stood there, so calm and still, pulled her forward. As she stepped closer, she couldn't shake the feeling that he had been waiting for her, as if their meeting had been written long before she had arrived. When she was close enough, she stopped, standing a few feet away, uncertain of what to say. The man didn't turn to look at her, but his mouth, the only visible part of his face, moved into the slightest of smiles. "You don't mind the rain?" he said softly, his voice calm, almost soothing, despite the strangeness of his appearance. Amaya felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from something she couldn't quite place. "No," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never have." His smile lingered, just visible beneath the shadow of his hood. "I thought as much." For a moment, the world seemed to pause around them. The rain fell softly, the city quiet, and Amaya found herself standing in an almost dreamlike stillness. There was something about this man, something she couldn't explain. Though she couldn't see his eyes, she felt the weight of his presence, as if he knew things she could not begin to understand. "Do you love it?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. The man was silent for a moment, his head still tilted toward the sky. "I understand it," he said at last. "The rain, it's part of this place, but there's more to it than that." Amaya's heart skipped. His words seemed to echo something deep within her, the very questions she had been asking her entire life. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice more urgent than she had intended. Slowly he turned toward her, though his face remained hidden in shadow. "It hasn't always been like this," he said quietly. "There was a time before the rain. You know that, don't you?" Amaya felt her breath catch. How did he know? She had spent years searching for answers about the rain, why it never stopped, what had caused it to begin, but no one had ever spoken of it with such certainty. "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He tilted his head slightly, the shadow of the hood shifting just enough for her to glimpse the faint outline of his lips curving into that same gentle smile. "I know many things," he replied. "And I think you've been searching for someone like me." The rain fell quietly around them, but in that moment it felt as though the rest of the world had faded away. Amaya stood frozen, unsure whether to speak or remain silent, her heart pounding in her chest. There was something about this man, this stranger, who seemed to know the answers she had spent her life seeking. "Who are you?" she finally managed to ask. His smile widened just a little. "Someone who understands the rain," he said softly, "and someone who knows it doesn't need to fall forever." The rain continued to fall softly around them, and Amaya stood, waiting for the man to speak again. But he didn't. Instead, he simply turned his head away, gazing once more toward the mist-shrouded horizon, as if seeing something far beyond the city, beyond the rain. Amaya opened her mouth to ask more. She had so many questions. But before she could say a word, he began to walk. Slowly, almost lazily, he moved away from her, his cloak flowing in the rain like liquid shadow. His footsteps were nearly silent, blending with the soft patter of the rain on the cobblestone street. "Wait," Amaya called out, her voice more urgent than she intended. He paused briefly, though he didn't turn around. His head tilted slightly, listening. You said it hasn't always been like this," she continued, her voice trembling with the weight of her lifelong search. "Tell me more. Why does it rain? How can it stop?" For a long moment he stood still, as if considering her words. Then, without looking back, he spoke in that same quiet, soothing voice that seemed to drift through the mist. "There is a place, an old temple, forgotten now, buried beneath the city, on its outskirts." Amaya's heart quickened. An old temple? She had read of ancient ruins, remnants of a time before the rain, but no one had ever found any solid evidence that such places existed. The man's voice was almost a whisper now, carried by the rain. "Seek it, if you wish to understand." He resumed walking, his figure slowly disappearing into the gray, rain-soaked distance. Amaya watched him fade into the mist, her chest tightening with a strange, inexplicable feeling. She could have chased after him, but something held her back. It wasn't fear, it was something else, something deeper. As his figure melted into the shadows of the rain, a profound silence settled over her. The city, the rain, everything around her felt still, as though the moment was etched into the fabric of her mind. Amaya stood there for a long time, the rain soaking into her clothes, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and a growing sense of purpose. The stranger had disappeared, but he had left her with a new lead, a temple, a place buried under the weight of centuries and forgotten by the city, but somehow connected to the rain. The thought filled her with a fresh resolve. For the first time in years, she felt closer to an answer than ever before. Amaya wasted no time. For days, she scoured the city's oldest records, searching for any mention of a hidden temple on the outskirts. Most of the texts she found were vague, mere footnotes in history books, describing the temple as an ancient ruin from a time long before the rain had begun. No one knew exactly where it was, and many had come to believe it was just a myth, a story told by the city's elders. But Amaya knew better. The man, whoever he was, had given her a clue, and she was determined to follow it. After days of relentless research, she found what she had been looking for. A map, old and faded, barely legible, tucked away in the back of a forgotten manuscript. It was incomplete, but it showed a network of underground tunnels on the city's outskirts, leading to what seemed to be an ancient temple hidden beneath the surface. Amaya gathered her belongings and set out immediately. Driven by a strange, irresistible pull, she traveled beyond the familiar streets, out past the city limits, until she reached the desolate outskirts. The rain, as always, followed her, drenching the barren land. She found the entrance to the underground tunnel just where the map had indicated, a small, overgrown crevice in the side of a hill. It was nearly invisible beneath the tangle of wet vines and earth, but Amaya pushed through, her heart pounding with anticipation. Inside, the air was damp and cool, the scent of moss and decay thick in the narrow passage. She made her way deeper into the darkness, her footsteps echoing softly against the stone walls. After what felt like hours, she reached the heart of the underground structure, a vast, crumbling chamber with stone pillars that had long since begun to decay. At the far end of the chamber, she spotted it, a small, ancient altar covered in dust and debris. On top of it lay an old book, its pages yellowed and frayed with age. It was half destroyed, the leather cover torn and worn, the pages barely holding together. With trembling hands, Amaya wiped away the dust and opened the book. Most of the text was illegible, the ink faded and smudged by time. But on one of the few surviving pages, something caught her eye. A faint, hand-drawn sketch. Her breath hitched in her throat as she stared at the image. It was him. The figure in the drawing was unmistakable. The same short stature, the same cloak with the hood drawn low over his face, casting a shadow that concealed everything except his mouth. It was the same mysterious stranger she had met in the rain. But as she examined the chamber further, she noticed something else. The walls were covered in strange markings, ancient symbols carved into the stone, their meanings lost to time. Though she couldn't decipher them, they held a sense of weight and history, a connection to a past that seemed almost tangible. Alongside the symbols, she spotted a diagram, faded but clear enough to make out. It depicted a once barren land, a place where rain had never fallen, surrounded by mountains and trees, an echo of a world before the constant downpour that enveloped the city now. Amaya's heart raced. Who was he? Why was he in this ancient book? And how was he connected to the rain? The questions flooded her mind as she realized the significance of her discovery, deepening the mysteries she had yet to uncover. After days of study and exploration, Amaya found herself drawn back to the bridge where she had first encountered the mysterious man. The rain had become a constant companion, a soothing but relentless rhythm that played in the background as she walked. With each step, her heart raced, filled with anticipation and uncertainty. As she approached the bridge, she could see the water cascading beneath, mirroring the clouds above. The mist curled around the stone arches, lending the scene an ethereal quality. It was a place that felt almost sacred, a liminal space where the past met the present. Amaya stepped onto the bridge, glancing around, her mind racing with thoughts of the temple, the ancient symbols, and the drawing of the man she had found. As she walked, her gaze caught on the intricate markings etched into the stone of the bridge, symbols she had seen before in the temple, the same ancient language that seemed to whisper of forgotten histories. Each curve and line resonated with the memories of her discovery, a thread connecting the two places. As she reached the center of the bridge, the rain began to lighten, the droplets dancing softly around her. Suddenly, she felt a familiar presence. Turning slowly, her breath caught in her throat as she saw him standing at the far end of the bridge. The man was cloaked in his dark, flowing attire, the hood still casting a shadow over his features. But this time, she could see his mouth curling into a gentle smile. His presence was calming, a soft light in the midst of the gray. "Why have you come back?" he asked, his voice barely rising above the whisper of the rain. "I needed to see you again," Amaya replied, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "I found the temple. I found the book." His gaze deepened, a flicker of interest shining through the shadows. "And what did you learn?" "I learned about the rain, about the land before it. I saw your drawing, she said, stepping closer. But I still don't understand. What does it all mean? Why did you show me the way? He took a step forward, his presence enveloping her like a warm embrace, though the chill of the rain still hung in the air. The rain has been a blessing and a curse for this city. It has shaped its history, but it has also hidden its truth. You, Amaya, have the power to change that. What do you mean? She asked, her curiosity piqued. With a thoughtful look, he gestured toward the bridge, as if the stones themselves held stories waiting to be told. About 2,000 years ago, this land was completely dry, as if the rain itself had forsaken it. Years would pass without a single drop, and when it did rain, it came in violent torrents that swept away everything in its path. The people, weary of this harsh existence, sought a solution. Amaya listened intently, her heart racing with the weight of his words. The scholars of that time delved deep into their studies, seeking a way to bring gentle rain to the land. They uncovered legends of a man who could control the rain, a figure said to befriend the clouds. This man would only appear in places where it rained, and few were ever fortunate enough to glimpse him. Did they find him? Amaya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly. I am that man. For 2,000 years I have been captured here, the rain flooding the city as an act of self-defense. When they tried to imprison me, I could do nothing but fight back. I never intended to harm anyone, but my power became my prison. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You are the Rain Man? But why didn't you escape? I was locked in place by an ancient script, a mechanism set in motion by those scholars, he explained. But there is a way to unlock me. You must search deeper into the temple to unravel the process of freeing me. It is the only way the rain will cease, and the sun will rise upon this city again. A surge of determination coursed through Amaya. I will do it. I will find the answers. Look closely, he urged, his voice softening. You hold the key to a new era. As he spoke, the rain began to lighten further, and the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in what felt like ages. Golden rays filtered through the mist, illuminating the bridge and casting a warm glow around them. Amaya gasped, her heart swelling with hope. Is this? Yes, he said, nodding slightly. But it is up to you to embrace it. With that, he stepped back, slowly fading into the shimmering light. Amaya reached out instinctively, but he was already disappearing into the mist, leaving only a gentle warmth behind. The rain resumed its gentle rhythm, but now it felt different, softer, more welcoming, as if acknowledging a shift had occurred. Amaya stood on the bridge, watching the spot where he had vanished. A newfound determination surged within her. She understood now that the journey ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to embrace it. Armed with knowledge and a deeper connection to the rain, she would return to the temple, uncover the script, and help the Rain Man break free. With the sun illuminating the path ahead, Amaya felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her. She hurried back to the temple, her heart pounding with anticipation. The rain continued to fall gently, a soothing rhythm that now felt like a promise rather than a burden. As she stepped through the weathered archway, the air was thick with history, and the remnants of ancient power lingered like a whisper. Inside the temple, she recalled the drawings and markings she had studied, the symbols that spoke of the past. Following the echoes of her intuition, she ventured deeper, determined to find the ancient script that held the key to freeing the Rain Man. Navigating through the dusty corridors, she brushed aside cobwebs and debris until she reached a chamber illuminated by soft, golden light, filtering through cracks in the stone walls. In the center lay an altar, covered in dust but radiating an undeniable energy. Her heart raced as she knelt before it, her fingers tracing the surface where the script was etched. The inscriptions were fragile but legible, ancient words that pulsed with power. As she copied the script onto her parchment, she could feel the connection between the past and present weaving together. This was the key to his freedom and the city's rebirth. With the script secured, she made her way back to the bridge, her heart racing with excitement and trepidation. As she reached the center of the bridge, the rain began to soften, and she could feel a shift in the air. She stood in the very place where he had first revealed his true identity, a space steeped in memory and possibility. "Here, I bring the key," she called out, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "I have come to set you free." The air shimmered, and the man appeared, cloaked in mist and light. He looked at her with eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper, an understanding that transcended words. "Thank you, Amaya," he said softly. "Now, let us unlock this prison together." As she recited the ancient script, the air around them vibrated with energy. The markings on the bridge began to glow, illuminating the shadows that had cloaked them for centuries. The ground trembled, and a warm light enveloped them, washing away the remnants of the past. With a final flourish of her voice, the last words escaped her lips, resonating through the air. The energy reached its peak, and in that moment, the rain paused, holding its breath as if the world awaited the dawn of something new. And then, with a soft sigh, the rain began to lift. He stepped forward, his form becoming clearer, shedding the shadows that had held him captive for so long. As he broke free, the sun poured over the city, casting a golden light that touched every corner, awakening the streets and the hearts of its people. Amaya watched, her heart swelling with joy and relief as he began to fade into the golden light. "You are free now," she whispered, her voice a soft promise. As he turned to her, a gentle smile graced his lips. "I will always be with you, in every drop of rain that falls. Whenever you miss me, look to the sky." With those final words, he disappeared, a fleeting memory in the golden embrace of the sun. The city sparkled with new life, the clouds parting to reveal a bright, clear sky. The rain had transformed from a relentless downpour into a gentle blessing, arriving only when truly missed, like a cherished guest. Amaya stood on the bridge, watching the world awaken. In the distance, she could hear laughter and the joyful sounds of life returning to the streets. The cycle of rain and sun had begun anew, a balance restored to the city she loved. Years passed, and Amaya often returned to the bridge, where the laughter of children echoed around her. One day, as the clouds gathered and a light rain began to fall, she gathered a few curious children close. "Do you know," she said, her voice warm and inviting, "that even today when it rains, the Rain Man appears at this very bridge? But only those who truly love the rain can see him." The children listened, their eyes wide with wonder, imagining the stories swirling in the droplets. And as Amaya spoke, she felt a profound connection to the past, a bridge between her story and the lives of those who would come after her. And so, it was said that a woman once shared a tale of the Rain Man who could control the skies, a gentle reminder that even amidst storms, there is beauty, mystery, and hope.